It's time to tell you something you won't find in history textbooks. I'm going to reveal the shocking truth about the Pharaoh's army in ancient Egypt. And if you think you know a lot about it, you're mistaken. Ancient Egypt loved to show its power on the walls of temples. On the bas-reliefs, the pharaoh is alone, while his enemies are in rows. But behind this picture lay a different reality. The army was made up of farmers, craftsmen, and migrants. Watch the video to the end to find out how peasants became the elite and who actually fought for the pharaoh. Are you ready for the shocking truth? The official myth depicts an army of noble warriors. In reality, the army was made up of tax-paying farmers. They were conscripted according to community and nom lists. The upper nobility coordinated recruitment and registration. I discovered this by accident. The documents show how the economy and the army were intertwined. A soldier was a tax in human form. He was registered along with his field.
Name and village. Have you sustained any serious injuries?
Only the usual aches, sir. I am strong enough for the fields.
We shall see if you are strong enough for the lead.
What happens behind closed doors is surprising. First, there was a census of men by age. Then their health and craft skills were checked. The best were sent to garrisons and the Navy. The rest remained in economic companies. The secret for which people pay thousands is simple. The pharaoh maintained a network of local administrators. They controlled both the harvest and the people. This made recruitment quick and predictable, and the army did not tear itself away from the soil of life.
We will be fine here. Come back safely.
What the experts don't talk about is the logistics of people. There weren't enough professionals for all the fronts. Therefore, mobilization came in waves after the harvest. Those who served received rations and clothing. Families were exempt from some of their duties. The truth that will shock you is in the proportions. The permanent core was small. The rest came for seasonal campaigns. This reduced the state's expenses and allowed it to keep the country in order.
Before the sun is up, I hear.
This is a hidden truth that everyone keeps quiet about. Foreigners reinforced the army no less than the peasants. They were hired as archers and drivers. They were paid with grain, cloth, and copper. Their loyalty was reinforced with contracts and gifts.
So I told him, that's not a lion, that's my cousin. You mercenaries are truly unmatched in battle.
What was found in the old archives is clear. The Metsai were the backbone of the guard and border service. Nubian archers often decided the outcome of raids. The Shardana were heavy infantry guards. It was a mixture of local and foreign forces. The hidden code that changes everything is the discipline of record-keeping. The register determined who went on campaign, who stayed at the canals and warehouses, who boarded the ships on the Nile, and who guarded the grain warehouses. We are very interested in hearing your point of view. How do you feel about the fact that the pharaoh's army was made up of peasants and mercenaries rather than mythical heroes? Write your comments and subscribe to the channel. This will help us produce new analyses. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new episodes.
Hold your head high and do as they command. Your service honors your family.
Want to know a secret that will change your perception? Recruitment began with seasonal reviews in the nomes. Elders brought people to the registration yards. Scribes checked their age and height. Priests examined the health of the recruits. The standard procedure was simple and precise. First, they determined who had already served. Then they measured the chest and shoulders with a simple cord. They noted scars and old injuries. The decision was made on the spot.
The Pharaoh accepts your service.
These reviews were conducted with remarkable regularity. The Egyptians understood that order was more important than haste, so each step of the recruitment process was planned in advance. People were gathered not spontaneously, but according to a schedule, when the work in the fields was completed. This allowed them to maintain the economy and at the same time ensure a steady flow of fresh recruits. Records were kept meticulously. Scribes entered the data into long papyrus scrolls, where each name was accompanied by a whole history. Family, age, previous service. The process itself looked almost like a ritual. People lined up in rows and passed through pavilions where representatives of the authorities sat. The scribe asked questions, the priest observed the condition of the body and spirit, and the headman confirmed the person's origin.
Do you pledge your lives to the Empire?
Everything happened calmly without fuss. The Egyptian recruitment system was different in that decisions were made not on the basis of random impressions, but on clear criteria: health, endurance, character. This ruled out disputes. Guess how long the selection process took? Several days at each center. People were sent out in groups. The strong ones were assigned to be spearmen and drivers. The agile ones became archers and scouts. A trade was considered an advantage for the army. A mason understood supports and blocks. He was taken into engineering units. A carpenter went into the boatmen and wagon trains. Weavers served in warehouses and sales. Each recruitment center functioned like a small state. It had its own courtyard, warehouses, tents, and tables for record keeping. Hundreds of people could pass through it in a day. Officials assessed not only strength and agility, but also the ability to follow orders, because discipline was valued above impulsiveness. Even facial expressions could influence the decision. Calm people were assigned to combat units, while hot-tempered people were sent where courage and quick reactions. The choice of branch of service depended not only on physical characteristics, but also on origin. The son of a charioteer often became a charioteer himself, because he had known horses since childhood. Hereditary carpenters joined the Navy because they knew how to work with wood and ropes. Egypt knew how to use each person's abilities. The army became a reflection of the whole society, where everyone knew their place and importance. Pay maintained discipline better than a stick. They were given bread, beer, and onions. Clothes and sandals were added. Soldiers' debts and bonuses were recorded. Everything was transparent in the registers. Service was divided according to terms and tasks. Short training sessions took place after the harvest. Long ones were for guarding the borders. Garrisons served on a rotation basis. The fleet lived by its own calendar. Rations were not just food. They were a symbol of the state's care. Bread was baked on site, beer was brewed according to army standards, and onions were considered essential because they helped maintain strength in hot climates. Everyone received exactly what they were entitled to and knew that their labor was fairly compensated. This system eliminated discontent. Uniforms, clothing, and footwear were also considered part of the service. Sandals were made of durable leather, and fabrics were chosen to protect from the sun. All of this was recorded in special lists, which noted not only the issuance of items, but also their condition. The Egyptian army's accounting system was remarkably accurate. Thanks to it, discipline was maintained not through fear, but through order. The length of service depended on the season and the task. After the harvest, recruits were called up for short training sessions, inspections, exercises, and road security. When there was a threat of invasion, the draft was extended, and people went to distant frontiers. Even garrisons changed on a schedule so as not to lose morale. Sailors had their own calendar linked to the flooding of the Nile, as it was the Nile that determined when the fleet could move. Everything was subject to the rhythms of nature. Foreigners were recorded separately and clearly. They received their rations. They had the right to settle with their families. Their children became bilingual. This strengthened loyalty for a long time. Recruits were taught drill and marching. Commands were given vocally and with gestures. Drums set the rhythm of the march. Signal horns directed turns. This is how the column maintained its formation.
You will follow every order without hesitation.
The Egyptian army included people from neighboring lands, Nubians, Libyans, Asians. Each people brought their own traditions, but served under the same laws. They were given land and allowed to settle with their families, which turned service into a path to a new life. Their children often spoke both Egyptian and their native language, becoming a link between cultures. This created strong bonds and reduced the risk of rebellion.
Let alone calling him brother.
To shared service.
Training began immediately after enrollment. Recruits were taught to maintain proper formation, march to the beat of the drum, and understand the signals of the trumpets. Every sound had a meaning: step, stop, turn. Voice commands were backed up by gestures so that even in the noise of battle, the formation would not lose its shape. This training turned the crowd into an organized force. Behind each one stood a squad leader. Squads were grouped into companies. Companies were grouped into battalions by location. At the top were the banners and commanders. This is how the command pyramid was structured. Which selection process do you think was more difficult? For the infantry or the chariots? Are you ready to continue watching to see the training grounds in the next chapter? This command system was as precise as a mechanism. The leader of the 10 knew his men personally and was responsible for each of them. Above them were the company commanders, who linked the lower ranks with the higher ones. The banners were not just decoration, but a means of orientation in the field. They helped the soldiers understand where they belonged and where to go. This is how the army pyramid was formed, with each level supporting the other. Orders came from the top down, but responsibility was distributed evenly. It was thanks to this that Egypt was able to maintain enormous forces without chaos and rebellion. Order became the very form of power, quiet but unbreakable. This is how Egypt built its military system, step by step, generation after generation. What do you think about this topic? Write your opinion in the comments.
The shield protects the man beside you as much as yourself. This is the discipline that holds the line.
What you have never seen are the training yards. These are enclosed areas next to warehouses and barracks. Here, recruits were taught basic movements. Here, they practiced combinations. Here, the confidence of the new recruits grew. An experiment that did not go according to plan became the norm. Recruits were first taught endurance, running, carrying bales, and rowing. Then stances, steps, and turns. Only then did they learn about weapons and shields. The secret that was passed down from generation to generation was rhythm. The drum led both breathing and throwing. Every movement was counted. Mistakes were caught by sound. The formation was held together by the music of labor. I will reveal the most closely guarded secret. The shield taught not only how to block a blow, it taught how to keep distance and line. Behind the shield, a person became calm. Fear gave way to technique. The hidden code that changes everything is repetition. Dozens of times, one combination: turn, cover, step. Raise the spear, throw, return, and again from the beginning. The secret that has only now been revealed is simple targets. The targets were placed at chest level. The strike had to be smooth and quiet. Shouting was not encouraged at all. Accuracy and rhythm were praised. What happens in the shadows is the commander nearby. He walked between the rows. He corrected the grip and stance. He showed how to conserve energy. He taught calmness under stress. What lies behind the picture is farming. They taught us how to weave straps for shields, how to repair a spear shaft without a master craftsman, how to adjust sandals for the journey, how to dry clothes after crossing. Information worth millions. Breathing. They taught us to breathe in 4 counts. There was a pause for each throw, for each carry, a longer exhalation. This school made peasants reliable and flexible. They did not rush or fuss. Their routine defeated panic. Step, shield, spear, and step again. Are you ready for the shocking truth? The equipment seemed modest, but it was precisely calculated. The shield covered important areas. The spear solved most of the tasks. The materials were chosen for their practicality and simplicity. The shafts were made of readily available wood. The edges were reinforced with leather strips. The spearheads were replaceable and inexpensive. The bow made the squad long-sighted and flexible. Nubian craftsmen were famous for their accuracy. Arrows had different tips for dense formations and for shields. A light quiver did not interfere with movement. Daggers were auxiliary tools used to cut belts and ropes and to work on thick clothing. They were of moderate and comfortable length. Not all fighters wore helmets. They were issued according to the task at hand. Drivers and guards wore them more often. Foot soldiers wore them when necessary for the campaign. Shields and formations were more important. Body armor was replaced by thick fabrics. The fabric was folded into several layers. Strips of leather were sewn on top. The result was a flexible protective vest. It did not restrict movement.
Finish quickly. The captain wants us ready by sundown.
Equipment was repaired on the spot. Belts were dried in the wind. Edges were sharpened with bone or stone. The tip was changed in 2 movements. The infantry did not depend on a blacksmith. The set was universal and modest. Everything fit into a bag. Nothing superfluous or heavy. Water and bread were the priority. This made the march smooth and long. Charioteers had their own subtleties. Gloves and fastenings were important to them. They protected their palms and grip. Bows were secured in special holders. Spare arrows were carried in boxes. Which detail do you think is the most important and why? Are you ready to move on to the next chapter to see how charioteers practice their skill?
Straps before every journey.
Yes, I understand.
There are no loud statements or noisy effects here. A chariot is a well-coordinated mini-team. The driver watches the road and the wind. The archer reads the field and the rhythm. The horses are helped to keep a steady circle. Distance is everything in this work. The chariot maintains an arc around the formation. The archer fires a series of shots on command. The driver maintains a smooth turn. The connection between them is a short command. The training grounds were flat. Markers were placed in a circle on them. They practiced entering and exiting the arc. They learned not to lose speed when turning. They learned not to interfere with neighboring crews. The archer worked in series of 3. The first was on the approach to the mark. The second was at the peak of the arc of attack. The third was on the exit from the turn. Everything was timed to the drum. The shields of the foot soldiers covered the windows of the formation. The chariots did not break the formation. They supported it at the edges. This is how the group kept the field in order.
Keep that line straight.
Repairs were done quickly and calmly. Spokes were replaced with set bolts. Inspections were carried out after each training session. Lubrication was mandatory before marching. Nothing in a chariot was accidental. Horse harnesses were treated like tools. Shoulder straps were dried separately. Knots were tied with standard loops. This sped up assembly and disassembly. It saved the crew's strength. Chariot commanders knew the terrain. They remembered bumps and sand. They kept the turning radius in mind and the reserve for reaching flat ground. Their work was quiet and precise. Chariots could not survive without infantry nearby. The infantry opened corridors for movement. The infantry closed them after maneuvers. The infantry held the line of reference. This was the common language of the field. This is how a peasant became part of the machine. He understood his place. He saw the whole picture. He knew how to keep the rhythm of the team, and thus he became the elite of the formation. Are you ready to learn the truth about the Army's silent support? The fleet was an expensive but indispensable force. It transported grain and people quickly. It connected garrisons along the Nile. It allowed the campaign to maintain its pace.
Heave on that line.
Secure the jars before we pull away.
Ships were built from available wood. The hulls were reinforced with rope ties. The sails were made of linen. The oars were distributed among sections. Crews trained on shallow crossings. Navigation was based on landmarks. Priests knew the seasonal water levels. Navigators marked shoals and rocks. Commanders counted the days of favorable winds.
The high wind favors the coast, Commander. It shifts with the sun.
I agree. We should navigate closer to the river bend before night.
Loading was carried out according to strict lists. First, grain and supplies. Then weapons and boxes of arrows. Last of all, people and harnesses. Unloading was carried out in reverse order. The ship was also a barracks on the water. Places and shifts were divided on board. Clothes and nets were dried there. Rations and deliveries were recorded there.
Bring the next chariot forward.
Secure the ropes, men. We cast off soon.
Crossing saved the strength of the infantry. Crossing by water relieved the exhaustion of marching. People went ashore ready. They immediately lined up in tens. The fleet assisted the garrisons of the Delta and the borders. It quickly delivered replacements and rations. It transported craftsmen and scribes. It carried supplies upriver. It also returned reports back. The secret, which seems simple, is the schedule. The river dictated the rhythm of everything. The army adjusted without argument. Therefore, the campaign went smoothly. The fleet taught people a different pace. The crew obeyed short signals. They worked to the beat of the oars. They rested according to a common schedule, and they easily fell into line on shore. What do you think is more important for the army? Travel by water or by land? Are you ready to move on to the next section, where we will discuss the invisible? This chapter is without loud effects and shouting. The Magi were the guardians of order. They knew the trails and boundaries. They guarded posts and crossings. They quickly assembled alarm detachments. They were valued for their language skills and knowledge of the area. They knew how to read human tracks. They knew how to work with scribes. They knew how to gather information for commanders. They knew how to get by with little supplies. Nubian archers complemented the Magi with their accuracy. They were taught to draw a bow from childhood. In the army, they accepted the order. Their series were smooth and quiet. They liked clear signals. The Shardana became heavy infantry guards. They were stationed at palaces and warehouses. They were entrusted with keys and seals. Their ranks maintained their reputation and form. They were respected for their steadfast order. Foreign language troops did not live separately. They were settled next to the locals. Children were taught to speak two languages.
Like this?
Craftsmanship went hand in hand with service.
That is perfect.
Border garrisons were a school of practice. There they learned schedules and patience. There they loved lists and marks. There they valued a steady pace. There future commanders grew up. The commanders of such a mixture were translators. They knew the signs and measures. They held the keys to the warehouses. They knew how to talk to priests, and they knew how to persuade communities. Rations in such units were issued precisely. No one argued with the lists. Any replacement was recorded by a scribe. Any mistake was corrected quickly. Accounting was the backbone of trust. These units did not seek glory and fame. They guarded warehouses and roads. They met convoys and fleets. They escorted columns to the nomads. They were the backbone of the state. This is how the peasant army gained its steel links. They connected locals and newcomers. They taught patience and order. They set the tone for the entire system, and they kept the country running smooth.
Close the gaps. Now hold the line firm. Good.
This chapter is measured and calm. Fortresses stood along the roads. They covered crossings and trails. Inside were wells and barns. On the walls were posts and signs. Warehouses stored grain and fabrics. Tools and belts lay there. Spare tips were kept there.
2 pair of sandals recorded.
Thank you, Scrib.
Shoes and raincoats were also issued there. Records were kept on boards and papyrus. The garrison lived according to the daily routine of the farm. In the morning, they made their rounds. In the afternoon, they worked. In the evening, they trained on time. Training signals were sent across the courtyard. Craftsmen serviced the fortress from within. Carpenters repaired beams and gates. Bricklayers repaired steps and walls. Weavers mended sails and bags. Scribes copied lists and measures. The garrison knew their district by the clock. Who would come for water in the morning? Who would bring salt at noon? Who would take grain to the pier? Who would ask for a place to stay for the night? The guards changed smoothly and quietly. The change took place without fuss or noise. The post took notes and keys. He recorded the condition and details and handed over the matter on paper. The training grounds were next to the warehouse. This saved time and energy. Training was conducted in series according to sounds. Breathing and steps coincided in count. This is how the endurance of service was born. The fortress was a school for the recruit. He learned the schedule and the signs. He learned to listen to short commands, He learned not to waste unnecessary movements. He learned to take care of his tools. Supplies flowed like a river. Rations were distributed by day and by person. Replacements were recorded immediately. Debts were paid off with harvests and labor. Everything was transparent and calm. This is how fortresses made the army stable. They united people and resources. They extinguished accidents and failures. They gave the army the breath of time, and they turned the season into a system.
Your watch was steady.
This part is without flashy slogans and noise. The commanders were senior craftsmen. They knew people by name. They remembered fields and families. They cherished order as a tool.
Concentrate on your duty, and you will be fine.
The signals were simple and clear. The drums set the rhythm for the formation. The horns signaled a turn and a pause. The flag showed the direction of movement. Plans were written in short lines. Assemble at the warehouse at dawn. Crossing after the third signal. Garrison change in the evening. Return with ration mark. Everything was businesslike. Accounting made the command stable. It was clear who was sick and tired. It was clear who was strong and precise. It was clear where a replacement was needed.
I agree. We should reinforce it immediately, before the morning.
The elders kept in touch with the priests. The calendar dictated the timing. The ritual disciplined the people. The holiday helped to reorganize the schedule and to give a breather after the gathering. The commanders protected the people from overload. They divided the journey into segments. They gave quiet breaks at regular intervals. They checked sandals and belts. Mistakes were corrected by analyzing the steps. First, they repeated the sequence slowly. Then they sped up to normal, and they returned to the beginning again. This is how the gaps in the ranks disappeared. The reward was simple and clear. An extra ration and fabric, an entry in the yard lists, the right to a plot closer to the water, and a place as an apprentice to a master. The punishment for failure was practical and understandable. Part of the ration was taken away for a period of time, extra work at the warehouse, a delay in the vacation lists, all without shouting or showmanship. This is how a mass of people was turned into a tool. This chapter will bring everything together calmly and accurately. Egypt was sustained by the rhythm of labor. The army was woven into this rhythm. It did not destroy the country's economy. It protected and supported it. Seasonality made service predictable. Recruitment took place after the harvest and calculations. People knew the dates and routes. No one fell through the cracks. The state avoided wasted labor. The mixed composition strengthened stability. The locals provided the foundation of the army. Foreigners added skills and experience. Garrisons kept order along the lines. The fleet tied everything together. The simplicity of the tools conserved resources. Shields, spears, and bows were repairable. They could be repaired on the spot. They could be stored without unnecessary hassle. They did not drain the treasury. Accounting was more important than decorations. The scribe was part of the order. His lines kept the campaign on track. His board eliminated randomness. His measures ensured fairness. The command avoided fuss and shouting. It liked short commands. It counted breaths and steps. It saved people and time. The army did not live apart from the people. It returned to the same community. It shared celebrations and work. It understood the land and water. It was part of one home.
Much better. Thank you, soldier.
We are glad to help.
This system survived the centuries peacefully. It knew how to repair itself from within. It knew how to teach newcomers anew. It knew how to accept new neighbors.
Careful, or this wall will lean more than he does after market day.
My leaning is legendary. This wall will just be strong.
Who actually fought for the Pharaoh? Farmers, craftsmen, and neighbors. Magi's, archers, and guards. Charioteers and chariot drivers. And the quiet crews of riverboats. This is how peasants became the elite without loud words. Their training made them the elite. Their endurance made them the elite. Their discipline made them the elite. And their respect for the common cause. What did you find most important in this system? Accounting, rhythm, or the simplicity of the tools? And what topics about the army and economy of the ancients? Write your suggestions in the comments and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on new, calm, and accurate analyses.
Therefore, the fifth seal dictates that the tribute from the coastal cities must be doubled to meet the projected shortfall.